Welcome to the Selling with Influence podcast, where we show you how to sell more of your products and services consistently, predictably, and profitably without having to offer discounts, quote lower margins, or compete on price in a race to the bottom just to get the business. My name is Dwayne Huff, founder and CEO of Influence Seminars, and I am your host. Hello and welcome back to this episode of the Selling with Influence podcast. I'm so excited for this episode because this starts the interview series that I've been alluding to and promising you, and I can't wait for you to hear and meet the interviewer or the interviewee. His name is Harvey Berman, and he is Vice President of Global Sales at ABI Research, and you'll learn a little bit about you learn a lot about what he does, his journey through sales leadership, and he talks about life and struggle and discipline and leadership and selling, all the best practices, all the pitfalls, all the things that we really need to understand to be successful consistently. A great human being, a great guy. We've become friends through this process, and I'm so excited to introduce you to the first interview in this interview series of the podcast. And without further ado, Mr. Harvey Berman. Hey, Harvey, it is so exciting to have you on the show. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule to share it with me and invest in the listeners of this show.
Dwayne, thanks. My pleasure. Really appreciate it.
Fantastic. Listen, before we jump into the questions that I have here for you, I'd like for you to share with the listeners your journey in sales, when it started or wherever you want to start from, and take us kind of to where you are now, the good stuff, the bad stuff, the pitfalls, the high rise, all of the stuff that you'd like to share that kind of gives us a backstory on your sales journey.
Sure, absolutely. And again, thank you. And I'll start with where I'm at today. As we discussed, VP of Sales with ABI Research, research firm. We do really cool stuff getting into 5G, AI, augmented reality, IoT, just all of the front line cutting edge research areas. And we then take that and engage with large, medium, and small customers really all throughout the world to help them, right, with their transformation and their go-to-market with what they're doing. And so it's awesome to be on the front end of that. But I'll go all the way back now about, I guess 30 years. I'm dating myself a little bit. 1991, I was about to graduate from the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. And I got this idea in my head. I really wanted to be a Navy SEAL, and that seemed like such a cool, awesome thing to do. And I tore my ACL in my knee about 6 months before the end of the year. And as a result of that, I was very limited in what I could do. So I ended up selecting surface warfare, and then went up to Newport, Rhode Island, surface warfare officer school. And in the back of my head, I thought, well, I'm going to heal up. I'm going to make this thing happen. I'm going to get out to Coronado. One day I'll be a Navy SEAL, and that'll be awesome. And so I went to the school I was at the surface warfare officer school. I was still doing all the rehab, and then I tore my ACL again while I was training to get back into this program. And at that point, it sort of hit me that my Navy career was probably not going to turn out the way that I had thought or hoped that it would at the time. So after about 3.5 years, I left the Navy as Lieutenant JG, had medical discharge because of my knee, which by the way is since healed. And then I had a choice to make at age 23, 24. What am I going to do with my life? And I hadn't really thought about it very much until that point. So still pretty young. A lot of my friends were getting into sales, and quite frankly, it scared me because both my parents were in real estate sales. Okay. And I remember they studied a lot and they learned a lot and they became very good at it. But I just thought, well, I don't think that's me. I don't know if that's what I want to do. But then there was the other side of it, which is some of those guys were making pretty good money. Right. And in some cases, a lot more money than some of my other friends. Yeah. So I gambled a little bit, and I did something totally outside of really where I was at the time, and said, well, I'm going to go into sales. And so I applied for a lot of jobs, and of course they said, well, do you have any sales experience? And I said, no, zero. But a paging company, and we're dating myself a bit here.
I had one.
Yeah, they rolled the dice, and they said, sure, we'll hire you. And I remember literally my first week, I was chatting with the sales manager. I'm getting the sales training. I'm ready to go. I hadn't even been out in the field yet. And I said, hey, what do we do for leads? How do we get leads? And he literally said, hold on a second, leaned over, took a phone book and dropped it in front of me and said, there you go. There's thousands in there.
Oh, goodness.
Like, all right, I've got a long way to go here. And there's a part of me that's always been very competitive. And so in a sense, I knew that was kind of a flippant, somewhat sarcastic response. And he wasn't a bad manager, but he wasn't the best manager I'd ever had either. And I looked at the team that we had, and I said, well, there's some really good people here. They're doing well. And I just don't want to fail. More than anything else, it was that.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to study, and I'm going to learn, and I'm going to get as good at selling pagers as anyone in San Diego. And so that's what I did. And I took the stuff home at night. I knew I could operate a pager better than anyone because they had the alphanumeric ones at the time. I knew the technology better than anyone, because I read it. What I didn't have though were reps, right? Meaning I wasn't in front of people selling. I didn't have that. So what I ended up doing was a lot of role playing, with my sales manager, with other people on the team. And I was listening to Tom Hopkins tapes and Zig Ziglar tapes. And I was reading the latest books, right? But when I learned the most, it was from being out in the field and talking to actual people. And I made so many mistakes. I did so many things that were wrong, right? I was going for just a quick close, right? Sometimes you felt the pressure of it's the end of the month and I have to make a number, or I said something that I shouldn't have said, or God, I wish I could have done that differently. And I actually took notes on my meetings. I would get back in my car and I'd write down how the meeting went, and then I would review it later that night. And I would just say, oh, I should have said this when they said this. And I probably did every wrong thing that you could do for about a month. But there was another part of me that said, hey, wait a second. This is a little bit like a puzzle. And if I put it together and this goes here and this goes here and that goes there, and if they say this, I'm going to say this. It's like, oh, wait a minute. This is kind of logical. I get that. I'm pretty good with logic and stuff like that. And I wasn't the best person at it, but I became very good at it. And I remember probably about 6 months later, I was the salesperson of the quarter in the region. I was so happy about that. Ended up actually getting promoted to sales manager shortly thereafter.
Nice.
However, the same day I was promoted to sales manager, they handed me a cell phone. And so, well, you're going to need a phone. And I said, wait a second, we're selling pagers and you're giving me a phone. And the writing was on the wall that technology might be on its way out. So I started interviewing and met a guy who San Diego, well, still today, but definitely back then as well, very tech heavy in terms of the customers who were in that area, guys like Qualcomm, guys like Sony, Hewlett Packard, Viasat, Novatel Wireless, Sierra Wireless. I mean, those are just a few.
Sure.
And he said, hey, would you be interested in being a manufacturer's rep? And I said, well, what is that? He said, well, you sell components and hardware into these companies that are doing the designs. And then when those things go to production, they start ordering a lot. You can do really well at this. And I remember thinking, well, what's really well? and some people were back then. I mean, there were a lot of people making, and again, this was 1995, 96. A lot of people making, $75,000, $100,000 a year, and to 26-year-old Harvey or 25-year-old Harvey, that was more money than I'd ever imagined that I could make in my life. So I found a company that was kind enough to hire me. And it was really the same thing where there were very, very technical people, a lot of people with MSEEs that were on the sales side. And I was like, geez, I've got an economics degree. I can't hang with these guys. What I did at the time is I kind of had this conversation with myself, says, I am maybe never going to be as smart as some of these guys that are in my company. And I'm definitely not going to be as smart as some of the guys at the companies that I'm talking to, the CTOs and the VPs of engineering, things like that. But what I can do really well is I can learn and I can get to a place that is technical enough and that I can build on that. And also if I tell someone, hey, look, I don't know the answer, I'm still a little bit new, but I'm going to find that out for you. And then I do, right? You've got to follow through on it. I found that those types of things worked pretty well. And then dumb stuff that we always say here, being on time, right? How hard is it to be on time? Well, not very hard at all, but how many people are always on time? Not that many. Being respectful to people, hey, I don't know that. And understanding that they may have other stuff going on and their response to me may have nothing to do with me. And so I had to take the ego out of it a little bit too, which is really hard for salespeople, right? That's the worst person you could tell to take ego out of is a salesperson. And then on the other side, following up with people after, right? Don't just sell something and then disappear, right? When I talk to people today that are our customers and friends and things like that, I don't want one interaction. I want this infinite game. Right? Where we always want to talk and we always want to continue doing business. And so that was something I learned early on. And I probably could have done a better job at it earlier on, where I was thinking, I'll get as much as I can. And this is a binary win-lose situation. I'm going to win and they're going to lose. I extracted the most possible money from them. Well, if the customer doesn't feel good about it, we'll never work together again.
Right.
And I remember people would occasionally point these things out to me. And so I've continually had this this transformation throughout the career of, okay, take the ego out of it. Think about this. You're talking to a person. It's not an adversary. It may seem like that. It's not an adversary. They have to get to really the same point that you have to get to, which is they need something. You have something. Can we meet at some point that works out? And so I kept going within that space. I worked at another rep company for about 10 years, had some amazing lines, was a rep for Intel, I was a rep for Analog Devices, many other major lines. And it just got me exposure to so much stuff. And still at the same time, building on that technology, learning more about sales, and then moving over into the sales management side, which has nothing to do with sales, by the way. And I remember when I first got in, my thought was, well, they just take the best salesperson. And to be clear, I was not the best salesperson. I was good. I was probably, maybe sometimes I was number one, but I was good. But I was 100% solid in what I said I was going to do. And I thought things like character and following through and all those types of things and working with customers again and again, that always worked really well.
Nice. And there's so much to unpack there that are fundamentals. And if you actually, and we talked about this in a prior conversation, and we align on this so much, which is why I'm excited we're having this conversation. But just to pull it out, because the first question we have up here kind of leads to where you're going with this. Yeah. But so much to unpack in sales fundamentals. You and I've had a couple other people interview on the show, and some of these same principles come up. So they really stood out to me. Number one, you took it upon yourself, even after hours in that first pager job, to learn the technology, to take it upon yourself and your responsibility to really bone up on the knowledge, the product knowledge, the information, and really be an expert in that product, knowing it better than anybody or most, and using that to drive you to become better. Because if I'm not mistaken, you said you were kind of scared of failing in that situation.
I was.
And that fear, and listen, I know I get it. Whenever I was, when I started my pharmaceutical career, I was the same way. I was so scared to fail because of a lot of pitfalls that I had experienced in the past. And so that fear of failure was driving you, which, you don't want to live there, but it was, right? And then realizing that, hey, I'm gonna learn a little bit about sales, but I realize I've got to practice. And you talked about role play.
Yeah.
But then you realize that role play is only so good. I got to get in there with the customer. I got to evaluate myself and say, hey, I could have said that better. Maybe I should have said this. Don't do that again.
Right.
There's so much great stuff there that you learn on that journey. And then coming into that sales management role and realizing now I've got to lead other people, you know, and now I have all this experience. How can I help them navigate that? You know, and that's pulling a little bit from a past conversation we had, but I wanted to share that story so people would know kind of how you came up the ranks and where you'd been to get where you are today. Right. So my question becomes this: from a sales fundamental perspective, some of it you just laid out, what was pivotal in helping you to succeed? And in that context, what's no longer working that maybe you did in the past? What are the timeless principles and fundamentals? And what are some of the things that no longer work because of the world we live in today?
Yeah, I'm going to answer it in reverse because I like to always end on a positive.
That's fine.
What does not work, and it really, I would argue it never worked, was the gimmicky types of stuff for sales. And it was and I know people always think car salesmen, and you know what, I've met some really good car salesmen, so I'm not gonna trash anyone for any job that they have. But there's become this sort of caricature of that's the worst person in the world that you should want to interact with. And that's, first of all, that's not true. But yes, there are a lot of things people like to do that are very gimmicky, and it's kind of a gotcha thing, and you don't feel good about it at the end of that sales process. And so those types of things, this sort of verbal chess match, or, I gotcha, I said something and you don't have a counter, that does not work.
Not to interrupt you, but dig into that. Why do you think people do that even in today's day and age? What's driving that?
What is driving I want to be clear, what's driving the behavior of people thinking they should sell that way?
Yeah, exactly.
I hope it's changing, by the way. I still see it. I think there's less of it. I think it's probably left to their own devices without proper training, without a manager that really cares about what they're doing. If I had nowhere else to go, you know, water goes to its lowest level, right? The path of least resistance. And that seems like, well, maybe those things would work, but it's counterintuitive. Those things don't work at all. And they really never have. And I would argue that point vehemently with anyone.
Sure.
Let me tell you what has worked is things like discipline works really well. Discipline meaning I just did this with my team a week ago. We blocked out 4 hours on Friday morning. Everybody was going to call people that attended a seminar that we held recently. And we had a fantastic turnout. I think we had just under 1,000 people for this. I did not want to make phone calls for 4 hours. Didn't want to. There were other things I would have rather done. Meaning on a scale of 1 to 10, it wasn't a 10 for me, right? Maybe I should put it that way.
Sure.
But I knew that I had to do that if we're going to engage with new people, you know, that we're going to bring into the company.
Sure.
And so it's the discipline of just saying, I know that I need to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to hold myself accountable to do it. And oh, by the way, if I don't do it, how can I expect anyone on my team to do it?
Wow. No, absolutely. And so that's a very positive thing right there and an example of leadership. But I'll go back to what you said about left to their own devices and maybe they don't have a leader or a manager showing them the right way to do it. So they're struggling, they're trying, and they haven't figured out how to finesse the situation and do it appropriately and authentically because they're just left there.
Right.
You know, and going back to the discipline thing, I resonate with that because whenever I was scared in my pharmaceutical job, kind of like you were in your pager job, one thing I could fall back on was the foundation and the track they laid out for me that said, hey, Dwayne, you're going to call on 6 pharmacies and 10 to 12 doctors a day without fail. If you do not, we will fire you. But we're not going to tell you how much you have to sell. We're just going to hold you to an activity goal. And that's what they knew is what you're saying. Discipline, execution, accountability, you know, and if you do that, you're going to get good results. And, you know, but I digress. But the point being is that discipline aspect.
It is. And that doesn't mean things like motivation are not important. Motivation is good. Yeah. But motivation is inconsistent. And I'll tell you what I mean. I'm going to go outside of sales for a second. I've been running a little bit more lately. I've got a race coming up that I'm going to do. There's something else that I've never done before. So when I was super motivated to go run, the day my brand new running shoes showed up. Well, 2 weeks later, they're just shoes, right? They're not brand new running shoes. And so the motivation, I can't count on being motivated every single day.
Yeah, you're
I
right.
can put on music that I'm really going to enjoy, and maybe that pumps me up a little bit. Sure. But I've heard that song before, right?
Right.
What I can count on is that my alarm's going to go off really early, that I'm going to get out of bed really early, that I'm going to go do the thing that I said I was going to do. And even better, maybe I can be accountable to someone else and say, hey, I told you I was going to do this. I got this done. And that's what gets you through.
That's good. That's good. It's the discipline that gets you through whenever the emotion is not getting you through. And I'm like you, man. There's certain music that I love to listen to. I'm a big Rage Against the Machine fan. And before I do anything, it gets me jacked up, man. I'm going. But I've heard those songs before.
Yes.
If I didn't get enough sleep the night before and I'm not feeling it, I've got to have something else that's going to get me out of bed, get me going. And so I have to have a lot of different things that will, if you will, go into Anthony Robbins, motivate me and change my state. Yeah. So that I can perform. And if it's accountability, and to a leader in this situation of sales, there's another piece, right?
That's right.
And so fundamentally, just to summarize what we just said here, what's no longer working is the slimy, sleazy, pushy, aggressive, manipulative type of stuff. Nobody likes it. Nobody wants it. Everybody likes to buy stuff, but nobody likes to be sold to.
That's right.
Right. But it's the discipline of having the activity and showing up even when we don't feel like it. And we got to find a way to make that happen consistently.
Yeah, and let me add on. I'm not sure I answered it as well as I could have. I would also say a level of humility, and this isn't, making it not about me, right? It's about them. It's about us having a conversation. And again, it's not about doing battle. And sometimes the best thing to do, and I have an outstanding sales team, and sometimes I have to tell them, which I have to tell them, hey, it's okay, just relax a little bit. They're going to get back to us. And I'd always rather have it be that way, right, than the other way around.
Sure.
But I think that's sometimes is it too, is just, hey, relax. I get it. We have quotas. We have to hit a number at the end of the month. Everybody wants to make more money. But sometimes the best thing to do is to back off a little bit, because people don't want to feel pressure. We've got enough pressure right now with the way the world's going.
Yes.
No one needs more.
Exactly. Well, no, I love that, man. And I'll say this, you experienced it. I experienced it early in my career, where there was this pressure that you felt that if you didn't make your numbers at the end of the month, you were on the chopping block. Yeah. And we could talk about, that's a whole nother show that we could have. Right. But I think part of the failure is on management and leadership side, because they're making us feel that way, where they should be going, okay, we know this is going to take a little time. And we're with you every step of the way. And if you're not getting it, we're going to coach you, guide you, mentor you, train you some more, so you do get it, because we refuse to let you fail.
That's right.
Unless you show us you don't care. And then we have a problem. And I think it's evolved a little bit since then, but I still see, unfortunately, the churn and burn stuff going on, from management leadership not doing that part. But anyway, go ahead.
If someone on my team, if I have to let them go, I have failed as a leader, period.
Okay.
I failed, meaning either I shouldn't have hired them in the first place, or I didn't do enough things along the way. Yeah. And by the way, it's okay to fail, but the failure is on me, right? Yeah. Did I do everything I could to make them as successful as they could or wanted to be? Did I do that? Could probably always do a little bit better at that. Right? Did I give them time? Did I prioritize what they needed? If you were to ask them, what would they say? Sometimes it's a different answer, right? And on the other side, again, maybe I just made a bad hire. And then, you know what? I need to get better at hiring.
Boom. Wow. That's perspective, and that's humility, like you were talking about. And I don't run across many sales. I agree with you 100%, by the way, but I don't run across a lot of leaders who really understand that on a deep level. So that's beautiful. And that's why so many times we align on our conversation, right? And it is, we're responsible, if we're leading a sales team, to make sure they succeed. And like you said, if it's a bad hire, then it's on me. I have to go back and understand how to hire better.
That's right.
But if they fail, what are they going to say? I love that. Let me move us forward to the next question, if I may. What do you think most people miss when it comes to selling? What do you think they miss?
It's a great question, and I'm glad you asked, because I would have given you a different answer probably 10 years ago than what I'm about to say now. What I have learned so much, and I want to be careful. I know a lot of people who listen to you and to your podcast, they're very senior and they've done this for a long time, and they, part of them is going to cringe. So I'm gonna expand a bit on the answer.
Okay.
It is the relationship part of what it is that we're selling, is understanding that I'm talking to another person and I want to get to know them a little bit. And I'm not saying we need to be best friends and have all the same hobbies.
Sure.
But you know what? I may want to know, hey, now with Zoom, right? Hey, is that your dog in the background? Or you know, a lot of people think you have something from their college that they went to. Oh, you went there? That's a cool place. I know someone who went there.
Sure.
The whole tone of that conversation shifts. I was on a call earlier this week with a really, really interesting customer, and his personality was very standoffish, and he was the head guy on their side, and there was just hardly any connecting going on here at all, and I was sort of trying, just wasn't going that way, and toward the end of the call, I said, I won't use his name, I said, hey, do you mind staying on just for an extra 2 minutes, because there were 5 other people. I said, I have a question I want to ask, but you know, not with everybody else on the call, if that's okay. I was lucky he said yes. And I said, hey, on your LinkedIn thing, and this guy was a CPO, it says you're a photojournalist for all these rock bands.
Wow.
And he goes, yeah. I said, you worked with the Foo Fighters, you worked with Green Day, you worked with Guns N' Roses? He's like, yeah.
Wow.
I said, how did you get into that? Well, guess what? I was talking to a totally different person than I was 10 minutes ago.
Wow.
And we didn't talk about business at all, but what we did do is we furthered and we kind of connected on something that we didn't have 10 minutes ago.
Wow.
That to me is something that people miss. And I hear the term trusted advisor all the time. And it's, by the way, that's great.
Yeah.
Everyone should aspire to be that. Right. But how do you become trusted? Right? Obviously, I want to give out good information. I want to make recommendations and things like that. But, and this is not my quote, I've heard other people say, we want to work with people that we want to work with.
Yes.
And that goes both ways, right? There's certain customers, I'm good friends with some of my customers, sure. Right? And I always enjoy talking to them, and guess what? They almost always pick up the phone when I call. I think that part sometimes gets overlooked, that people they're pushing so much in the direction of the sale, they don't take a few minutes to go there, or better yet, maybe that person has something going on in their life. You know, I've had, and customers have told me, you know, they had someone as a result of COVID, that someone close to them was in the hospital recently. Well, their response to me that day probably isn't going to be very good, right? About the latest in artificial intelligence that I want to talk to them about. Right. Is that my fault, or is that their fault? No, of course it's not. We're just talking on a bad day. And so getting to understand the people, and then obviously all those things, right? Of course you want to be a trusted advisor. Of course you want to do all the right things, but you've got to understand, I'm just talking to a person. And that to me is so important right now.
No, that's good. And just to go back, because I don't want to glaze over that. We hear all the time, people do business with people they know, like, and trust, which is true enough. But I like the way you said it better when you said people want to do business with people they want to do business with. Did I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think so many times, if we look at as salespeople, I think one thing that the salespeople that are listening to this can pull from this, maybe even some of the sales leader, is depending on how we're wired, the dominant, the influencer, the analytical, or the amiable type personality is how we're generally going to approach the way we think, the way we see things, the way we communicate. And I see so many people, whether to be frontline people or sales leaders, who put a higher weight on relationship and or data, depending on how they're wired. And what they're failing to see is that we have to be able to adjust to all 4 of those different type of people. Right. And if, like you said, and a perfect example, you said, you know, this guy, the CEO, there was almost no back and forth relationship going on. This guy was all business. He was a CEO. But when I paused and pulled back and no, when you paused and pulled back and you said, hey, can you hang out for just a couple more minutes? And I got a question for you. Just don't want to ask it on the call. He said, sure. And then you went somewhere he was not expecting, but it going back to what Simon Sinek, because we talked about start with why, I think in the past, when he talks about the limbic, the emotional part of the brain, you resonated with something that lowered his walls genuinely because it was important to him. You didn't talk about business. You went where he was. Yeah. And I don't want to glaze over that because that's so important. And going back to what are people missing in selling, I think one of the big things you just hit on there is that we got to not only adjust to the situation, not only realize it's not us, it might be something going on in their world, but are we really connecting with the person we're talking to in the way they need to be connected with?
And that's I talk about humility so much. It's not about me. I don't expect this person. I'm a meathead. I like going to the gym. I like martial arts. I have a German Shepherd. I like doing archery. I'm not going to meet a lot of people who like those four things.
Right.
But guess what? My customers and even my other friends, they do all kinds of different things that they enjoy. And I'm curious, oh, that's cool. Tell me about that. Yeah. Right. And if I have a genuine interest in that, sure. And now it's almost even easier with Zoom because I've met everybody's pets, I feel like, in the last couple months.
Right.
Oh, hey, is that your dog?
Yeah.
They will talk about their dog for 10, 15 minutes, right? Or the cat or whatever.
Yeah.
But we've got to connect and we've got to take ourselves out of it. It's not about me and the things that I like. It's about them. And then guess what? If I show a genuine interest, they're going to start asking me some questions at some, and then now we're just talking, and that's cool. And again, I am not dismissing. Do we need to be product experts? Yes. Do we need to make good recommendations? Yes. Do we need to be good at negotiating? Absolutely. We know that, but we got to spend some time over here as well.
That's great, man. That's awesome. And I think, I think a lot of us, myself included, I'm still working to get better at it. We miss that. And, to the point you're making that nobody's, it's not about us and we have to have that humility. One of the ways that my wife likes to remind me of that, and I'm so thankful that she does, is she says, Dwayne, nobody's on your schedule except for you.
That's right.
And we got to kind of keep that in mind. She's a woman of wisdom. I'm really appreciative that she keeps me grounded in that respect. It brings me to the next question, if I may, Harvey. The industry, as in your industry, the sales industry, the industry as a whole has changed dramatically. But in some respect, people have not gotten the memo that it's changed. And so they struggle while others are adapting readily. And so when it comes to struggling or adapting readily, what's your advice to people?
So I'm gonna address this from a leadership point of view.
Yes, please.
Because I think that is an area where you say people haven't got the memo. For anyone listening, I am talking more to the management on this answer. And there's a reason why. There has been, in some cases, an abdication of what I would say is responsibility from sales leadership to salespeople to give them everything that they need to become successful. It is a trope, and it's an incorrect trope. And if you're listening to this and you're young and you're out of college and you're Gen Z, I'm not even gonna say millennial because they're past that now. I do not accept, oh, these kids don't have motivation. They're not interested in learning. They don't, no, that's wrong. You know what that is? That's bad leadership. And that means that you as a leader have not adapted to connect with them on their level. It's almost what we were just talking about with the customer, you've got to do with your team. And so, and I'm disappointed with a lot of people, not all, but maybe not even half, but a good number who are at my level who are not connecting with their sales team. And they're doing, well, you're going to do this because I'm the sales manager. No, that's not leadership. You're going to hire, I'm going to hire 4 people with the expectation that one of them will stick around. No, that is not sales leadership. And in not taking the time to really to understand that and to get what are their motivations, where do they want to be, and how can I really lay out a path to help them get there, that onus is on the sales manager, the VP of sales, or whatever it is. That's where that comes from. And in doing those types of things, we were talking earlier on the discipline side of you have to be in the game. If you're, I don't care how high up you are, you have got to be talking to customers, right? You've got to be doing some level of selling. That means you've got to be making calls to people who've never talked to you before. You've got to be on sales calls. You got to be helping your team. You got to be entering stuff and keeping Salesforce updated, right? Because your team is doing that. Yeah. And if someone stops doing that at that level, you know what I say, and I'm junior, well, boss isn't doing it, why should I? You know, and it's like, it's disappointing. So that's the thing that has changed or is changing. And it really bothers me how much of it I see. And now the flip side, there's people who totally get it right now. And they want to do the right thing. They want to set an example for their team. And I try to do that for my team with every single thing that I do. You know, in my last job, I picked up, it was based on the West Coast, and I had a lot of people that I worked with in reps on the East Coast. And I remember thinking about that, and I hadn't had a lot of people in a different time zone before. I had a few, but now I had a lot.
Yeah.
And I said to myself before I took that job, I said, I need to be ready to get on a call at 5 a.m. Pacific time, right? Which is 8 a.m. their time.
Right.
Why should I make them wait for me until 11? Wow. That's not fair to them. What if they have something that's important? And if I want them to do things, they need to see that I'm willing to put in the work. Because if I'm not, then their response is, well, yeah, they may not say this, right? It's easy to manage out of fear. It's easy to tell someone, well, go do it because I said so.
Sure.
That's the worst leadership ever. Yeah. And if you don't show people that you're willing to do that, and again, I didn't promote, hey guys, I'm getting up early just so I can be on your call, but I'm doing it because it's important to them. They should not have to wait. Just like you said, I'm on their schedule. If anyone from my team, they need to do a call late at night, and we do, because we have stuff all over the world sometimes. Sure. Or we'll do something super early in the morning because we have stuff over in Europe. Fine, that's when we're going to take the call. And I'll get up. That means we get up a half hour before, we're going to have a cup of coffee, whatever, because we need to do that for our team. And if we do those types of things, that spreads, that permeates throughout the whole team.
Yeah, Harvey. And one thing I'll add to that, bringing it back to the first question of fundamentals, is that you're teaching your people how to treat their customers by the way you're treating them. You know, and so if they see you setting the example, doing the thing, respecting them, connecting with them, understanding them, meeting where they are, making sure they're having everything they need to be successful, you're teaching them how to do the same thing for the customer, because at the end of the day, it's about customer outcomes and customer relationships. And that's how they're going to treat. I mean, I had a manager, and I'm so glad you're saying this. I had a manager, several of them actually, in the pharmaceutical industry, who they led, like you said, by example. They were in the trenches. They rode along with us. They did the thing, but they showed us, they demonstrated, they reached out to us and said, hey, I'm not here to gotcha, man. I'm here to help you. Right. You know? And as a result, we didn't feel the pressure. And I remember, oh gosh, I remember this clear as day. And it goes back to good leadership that you're talking about. And it goes back to the fundamentals we were talking about not being gimmicky or slimy or pushy or anything like this. I knew this because I had good leadership, but one day my manager came to ride with me. And great guy, no reason to be scared of him, but I wanted to impress him, right? Yeah. And so I'm sitting in there, and the old school manipulative, slimy, promotionally type person came out in me. I'm sitting here waiting for a doctor. He's sitting there with me, and the doctor comes up and said, "Doctor, blah 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 blah," and I just went into my pitch, right? Yeah. Well, right before that, the doctor had said, "Hey, Dwayne, glad to see you. Here's what we're doing. Here's where we're using your product," and blah blah blah. And he just really was forthcoming with why he was prescribing the product, and for some reason I felt compelled to try to sell him. Right. When the doctor left, my manager looked at me and goes, "Why'd you do that?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, Why did you pitch him? Why did you go into that?" I said, "Well, because that's what I'm supposed to do." He goes, "Dude, he told you he wrote the product. He told you where he wrote the product, all that kind of stuff." And at that moment, I realized I didn't have to live in the scars of the past. That's right. But that I could follow the example that was being set. And now it taught me how to treat the people the right way. Yeah. And so that's why I wanted to say that everything you're saying right there about how you're treating your people, how you're showing up consistently, early, late, and the way you're nurturing them has to translate into the way they're taking care of the customer.
I hope it does. And I take it, I like to think I take it further than that, because I really believe how you do one thing is how you do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, and I really do. And I think about these things. Okay. I get up very early. I get up at 4:30 every morning. And then, walk the dog, do whatever, usually do a bit of email, go for a run. Ideally, sometimes like to get 2 workouts in before the day gets started.
There you go.
But I even think about that. If I'm not giving the best effort I can on any of those things, let's say I go to the gym and workout's not that great, I feel bad about that.
Yeah.
I've let myself down. I feel like I've let other people down. It's like, and believe me, I fail every day. I fail every single day. I don't have, the workout didn't go exactly the way I wanted it to. Maybe the run didn't go. Heck, maybe I didn't get along with my dog as well as I would have liked, right? I had a conversation maybe with someone on my team, and I should have said that. I should have listened to them a little bit more, or maybe they had some really good feedback, but I wasn't hearing it at the time, right? And to really go back and reflect and think, I want to be as good at those things in every part of what I do, because that carries over. And by the way, when you do those kinds of things, and you have something really cool in your personal life, maybe you've achieved something outside. I have a friend right now, and he's training for a triathlon, right? And he's going to do it next month. And I guarantee when he's done with that, that's going to carry over into his work life. It's going to carry over into his relationships, because he's got that confidence, right? And the success that he's going to build on. And the way I think about this stuff is those things that we do, obviously within work, but outside of work, those all carry over. Yeah. And so that's why it's so important to me that we want to do as well as we can in everything.
I'm a big believer in that saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. In fact, me and my son had to have that conversation. And you know what? You're absolutely right. There's also a kind of a scenario we play out, and you've probably seen it in training, where it's the wheel of life, and we have spokes where it's our work, and it's our health, and it's our workout schedule, and it's our eating, and it's our spouse relationship, and all that kind of stuff. And we draw this line that shows imbalance, and we say, well, what would you do if your life was that wheel? It would be a mess. And so how you do anything is how you do everything tells us we have to have the discipline you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
We have to create the habits, because that momentum permeates everything.
Absolutely. And I want those little successes that I have in areas to go over. I'm doing something now with 2 guys that I work with, where for what we're doing is we did 45 days. We're going to work out twice a day, no alcohol, take a cold shower, read 10 pages, and drink a gallon of water every day.
Boom.
For 45 days, right?
Yeah.
And what's cool about it is anyone could do any of these things.
Sure.
Anyone could, right? There's no reason you couldn't do, but it's stringing it along. And what we said was, what we agreed on, if any of us fail for one day, we all start over at day 1.
Oh gosh.
So,
the accountability.
Here's the thing. We are now all, I am accountable to 2 guys. I am not going to make them start over.
Right.
And I'm sure they're not going to make me start over, right? So we're going to get to the end of the 45 days. We're going to do all these things. And I know, and we were just chatting this morning, hey, how's it going? And we're all totally psyched about it, because we're all doing this as a team. And again, that's going to carry over into every other part of our life.
Dude, that is ninja. I have never heard that level of accountability. I mean, I guess I've seen it in other areas, but as far as working out and eating clean and doing that right routine and being accountable to each other, because if one of us stumbles, we all have to start over. Yeah. That's some serious step up accountability, because you don't want to get halfway through that or a few days into that and frustrate everybody around you, because Absolutely. Now oh my God, that'd make you feel horrible. Dude, that's awesome. I would share that with many people, and the people listening to this, I hope they really take that in. And
right on.
Anyway, cool. Let me ask you this. Going into the next one.
Yep.
We talked about kind of your journey and your evolution. So I'm going to number 5 that I have here in front of me.
Yeah.
We got to talk about the elephant in the room, namely the selling environment due to COVID. What are some insights, advice, and recommendations you can share on how you and your team have navigated through COVID and the change that it's caused?
Yeah, well, everything's been tossed upside down. I was just chatting with one of our analysts yesterday. We were at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, right? It's a huge show for our company and for many of our customers in Las Vegas, and that was in January. seems like it was 10 years ago, but that was in January. And it was outstanding, right? Because we could get face to face. Oh, hey, let's go up there. Let's go talk about it. And you kind of get to know these people a little bit.
Sure.
That is all gone, right? And I love getting face to face with customers, but look, no one enjoys airplane travel, I don't think. But there is something about it that there really is no substitute for. But guess what? That's gone. Yeah. It doesn't matter if I like it or not, or I want to connect. I can't. So I've got to do more of I've got to be talking to people on, Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever platform people. I feel like it's all of them these days. Sure. And I've got to find a way to connect, kind of like, and again, this really goes full circle. We've got to be able to connect in our rooms far apart. We can't see each other. We can't shake hands. I don't know if we'll ever be able to shake hands again, right? And that's a very small thing, right? But for my good friends, we see each other, you want to hug it, can't do that anymore. So how do we replace that, right? We're going to have to get really good at communicating over video. And the people who do well and to really, you've got to take time, you've got to listen, and you're going to say something, I'm going to think about it a little bit, I'm going to react, and really to talk. And then also, as we said earlier, just remember, people have other stuff going on right now. And you've got to get that more than maybe you ever have. My own sales team has had people who've been in the hospital due to COVID. They've had deaths in the family. They've had to deal with fires, right? They've had everything you can, flooding, right? Can I expect them 100% of the time to be I need to be 100% on that day? You can't. Right. You can't. And those are the things I know about, right? And think of the customers that we speak to that we've just met once or twice. They're not going to share any of those things with us. So we've got to give people a little more of a wide berth and take ourselves out, have some humility. It's not about me. They just may be having a really bad day. And that's okay. That's okay.
Now more than ever, because that delay in this and the Zoom and not being face to face and belly to belly and them not sharing those things with us, we just have to anticipate, give them the benefit of the doubt, and realize they're human. They deal with stuff. We may not know what's going on, and be patient in the way we deal with them. Yep. Is what I'm getting from you. Cool. What's in sales we've talked about this, but what's the best advice you've gotten and the worst advice you've gotten on selling?
So the best advice, and it was actually life advice, was get out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And I think I probably always heard a version of it, but particularly maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And as I was moving up, and you move from sales to sales management, and even sometimes you have some sales management people under you. And I've been so privileged. I've worked with incredible people. But I've always had that, which is meaning I need to try and do new things and experience new things that I have not done before. And don't get stuck. Don't get stuck. I see guys, I'll give you a little bit of an analogy. I've seen guys who at the gym, and they do the same thing every single day, and they never lift more weight, and they never do anything different, and they're like, I just want to maintain. And it's like, well, why? Why would you want to maintain? I don't say this to them, but I'm thinking this to myself, right? And when COVID hit, back in March, I said, I'm gonna read more now than maybe I ever have. I want to get better at reading, right? I want to get better at leadership, right? I want to get better working with my team. I want to get stronger. Well, you can still do a lot of things even if your gym's closed, right? I want to get better at all of these things. And so I was thinking about it. So I was on a business trip 3 years ago. It was up in New England area. And it was just one of these crazy days that never happens. It never happens to me, where we had just had lunch. We had 2 meetings in the afternoon. Both of them got canceled. And I'd been fried. It had been a long week, and it was right at the end. So I used to live in New England. I'm in Rhode Island now, but many, many years ago when I was in the Navy, I was in Newport, Rhode Island, which is where I'm talking to you from today. And I had a friend who was in Newport, and we literally, I didn't even have his phone number through LinkedIn. He answered my things like, hey, are you around? I haven't talked to you in 20 years.
Right.
And yeah, hey, let's go have dinner. Okay, cool. So I drove down and I was, wow, this is really cool. And anyway, finished up the business trip. And on the flight back, I was thinking, I'm always telling people to go try and do something else. Go do the next thing. Go find out who you are. What can you go learn about yourself? And I came back and I said to my girlfriend, I said, we talked about this. I said, I've got an idea. so she gave me some side eye and said, oh boy. And I said, what do you think would happen if we both quit our jobs and we moved cross country to a place where we don't know anyone and just, I don't want to say start over, but just see what would happen.
Right.
And so the cool thing was she didn't throw anything at me at the moment. And we had a conversation, and I'm kidding a little bit because she and I are very similar on this, is we really gave it some serious thought. And I thought, I have been in the exact industry I've been in for 20 years, right? Which was embedded computing, primarily hardware, some software. And I had a really good job, right? As vice president of business development at a really, really good company called Contron. We had a ton of customers, a lot of business in North America, or actually worldwide. And my girlfriend had a very good job, had a really nice place in San Diego. We said, all right, let's do it.
Wow.
And so we bought a house, sight unseen.
Wow.
And by the way, we kind of just threw a dart. We decided, well, we got to be near an airport because we're probably going to have to travel. But that was really it. And at the time, we picked Providence, Rhode Island, because I had lived in Newport, and Newport seemed cool. It was about a half hour away, and I figured, okay, well, let's see where the journey takes us. And then we both resigned from our jobs without having anything lined up.
Wow.
So had a home I hadn't seen yet, had no job, and I drove cross country when everything was sort of settled. Still had no job, by the way. Came all the way out. And the day that I got in and actually saw the house, I guess I'd seen it once before because they did an inspection, but was literally got the keys. So I got the keys, and I remember it was, I guess this would have been February of 2019. Got everything settled, or sort of settled. So I got to get to the gym, right? Because you got to get a workout in every day. So went and found a gym, doing a workout. I get back out. Someone had smashed into my car. And I've only been in this city for a few hours now, and it turned out my car was essentially undrivable in that moment. So I ended up walking home, got home, and my neighbor says, hey, do you have a shovel? I said, I guess. Why? I just got here. He goes, it's going to snow about a foot tonight. It's like, oh boy. And so I didn't have a shovel. I ended up having to borrow his. And then as I got into the house, none of the furniture, nothing was there yet. I realized I had left my sleeping bag and inflatable mattress in the car, which was towed to some other place, which I didn't even know where at this point. So for the first 2-3 nights, I ended up just sleeping on the floor with some blankets, because I'm still waiting for all the stuff to come out. And while that was going on, I was thinking, well, I don't have a job. I'm sleeping on the floor. Shortly after that, one of my best friends died. And I remember, wow, what else? What else? But in that moment, another side of me said, you're going to get through this. You're going to get through this because I'm not going to give up right now. I've committed to move here. I'm going to do that, right? My car is going to get fixed. I'm going to find a job. And yeah, it absolutely sucks about my friend, but guess what? I'm going to keep going, right? And I'll do things to honor him, right, in his life. And that was, it was a low point, but it was also just a conversation that I had to have with myself that, talk about getting outside of your comfort zone. This is about as far as you can get,
sure,
right? And in that time, when I sort of had that conversation, it was like, okay, things are going to be okay. It sucks right now. It sucks right now. But I'm going to take all the stuff that's going on right now. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to remember how it felt, and I'm going to stay disciplined. And I know if I do the things I'm supposed to do, it will be okay. And that's, that was kind of how we ended up moving out here. And as it turned out, now I'm I'm with the company that I found shortly thereafter, and that's going well.
Man, I think so many of us need to hear that in this day and age, because on some level, we're all dealing with things we never anticipated and things we never asked for. It seems to keep getting worse on some level.
Yeah.
And I think in all of our lives, we're being pushed to the limit and pushed to the edge of what we think is the limit and the edge. And I think we need to hear that journey, Harvey, because we have to be reminded, keep doing the things that you know are the fundamentals and the things that are important and the things that will push through. And eventually you're going to get on the other side of this. This will happen and it will work itself out.
Yeah.
What a great story and a great example. So pushing outside of your comfort zone was a piece of advice
Yes.
that we were building upon. Can you remember a bad piece of advice or?
Yeah, it's almost the corollary, right? Is you hear people say, well, you should just be happy you have a job.
Yeah.
No, you shouldn't. If you should, first of all, if you're in a place you don't like, work to make it better. Yeah. And by the way, you don't have to be the CEO to be that person, right? You can be at a low level and you can do things as well as you possibly can, and you're going to influence other people from that, right? And if you've done everything, and I've been in this situation before where, particularly on the management side or the leadership side, where I could no longer do things to help my team, well, then it was time to leave. I was never going to be happy that I just have a job. Because it's about more than that, right? It's about doing the right thing. It's about doing as much as I can for my team, because I want to see them succeed and I want them to achieve. And that, I mean, boy, we talk about things which have changed over the last few years. Sure. I started off as that sales guy. I wanted, every last dollar there was, right? Because I wanted to be of material things that you want to buy. And then a switch comes on for me, maybe at age 35 or 40. I want my team and I want the people that I work with I want them. I get more out of that than I do when I get it. And I see them and hopefully I can do or say or support something to inspire them to get to where they want to get to. And that means more to me than the actual dollars.
And if you would have just settled for, you have a job, you should be happy, you'd have never pushed through to that next level of fulfillment.
Exactly.
And contribution.
That's right.
Awesome, dude. I really appreciate that. As we wrap this up, I got one final thing to ask. Weigh in on this however you see fit, but what's the next big thing that you or your organization, however you want to approach it, is working on, and what challenges lie ahead, and what's exciting to you that's in the future? What's exciting ahead?
Yeah, so I'll answer for both. On the technology, I love technology. I've done technology my whole life, and being on the cutting edge of that is so interesting to me. And the customers that we get to work with, and a lot of times we will get to see sometimes something that will be in the market in 1 or 2 or even 5 years out. Being on the front of that, I couldn't think of anything more interesting than that. On the leadership side, I always want to get better. I want to always get better so that my team can get better. And I want them to succeed and move forward and go do all the things that they want to do. And hopefully, I've been so privileged to work with some incredible people, and they've given me amazing advice. And so sometimes I'll hear myself talking to people I work with who are my team, and I will almost think of the person, use the exact same words. It's like they're not hearing it from me. They're hearing it from what someone told that other person. And if I can pass that on and they pick it up in their own unique way, I don't want them to pick it up in my way. Pick it up in a way that resonates with them. And that to me is what's next. And to keep that going, that to me is more fulfilling than anything else.
That's excellent, man. And I really like that we took this on a leadership heavy path, because the sales leaders who listen to this podcast, I know a lot of them are out there doing great and wonderful things, and they need the affirmation, the reaffirmation that the things they're doing are right, even if they're not seeing the results that the impact can have. They hear, yes, I'm doing the right things. Let me keep going in the right direction. Don't give up. It's going to get better. They're going to respond, and I'm doing the right things. And I think there's some of the leaders out there who are forgetting or missing, as we talked about earlier, those fine points of connection, of support, of jumping in there, of setting that example and taking care of their people, that maybe they needed to hear this. And I think we all needed to hear that journey you took about getting out of your comfort zone and realizing that even what we're going through right now, if we continue to put our head down, execute on the fundamentals, be disciplined, be accountable, eventually we're going to come out on the other side of it. And the only question is, are we going to come out on the other side of it better and stronger, or are we just going to kind of be stuck in the place of average of just settling for, oh, I got a job, that's good enough. So this is a really good conversation, man. I can't thank you enough for spending this time. And I look forward to many more conversations. One thing we didn't even get to dive into today that I know we both have a love for is negotiations. And so hopefully I can get you back one day and we can beat that subject up and really pull some value there.
Yeah, I think we got the heavy stuff out of the way. But Dwayne, thank you so much. I love what you're doing. I've loved listening to your podcast, the Influence podcast, and I what we do each day, the sales side. There's nothing I'd rather do. It is so interesting, and to me, and I work with some great people who are on the analyst side. We work with great engineers, all the different jobs, accounting, all that. But what's the most fun is sales. So I would always want to come back. I'll probably never leave.
Awesome, dude. Such a pleasure to have you as a guest. We'll talk soon. Take care out there, and let's stay in touch and do this again.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Have a good one, bud.